is Mitchell Brown, and I'll be talking about my observations during the Summer 2 semester for my Exceptional Children class with Ms. Vaughn. For this video, I will talk about one observation from Pathfinder's School in Jacksonville, the LEDC Lone Oak Pre-K Adult School, the LEDC Cabot Adult School, and two observations from the Cabot Pre-K School. My observation at Miss Mayfield's first grade classroom at the LEDC Pre-K School in Cabot started with students already working on a coloring assignment given to them. The students were working on an art project for Father's Day using paint bottles with brushes on the end of them, as well as coloring a bag that said Dad. Once the students had enough color on their bags, the teacher gave each student several crowns and a white sheet of paper with a suitcase with color on it. And while the students were busy with this, one of the teachers started cutting out some of the students' other artwork and laminating it while keeping an eye on the students, making sure that they didn't act up. While working, the students were well behaved and didn't talk much, but they did talk every now and then. After about 10 minutes of the students coloring the suitcase, the teacher said, "Whoever finished their assignment could go play in the center." And immediately all of the students got really excited and finished coloring as quickly as they could. Whenever a student finished coloring, they would hand their project to one of the teachers and then would go play in the center. The center was a large area of the room in the corner that was in a giant carpet enclosed by shelves. And in the shelves are various toys that the children loved to play with. There was one autistic girl in the class which required one-on-one attention from the teachers. So after everybody was done, the teacher helped her with her work individually. Having two teachers in the classroom really lightened the overall workload, and I never would have thought that having two teachers in the same classroom would be this beneficial. They worked like a cohesive unit, with each teacher always doing something different. The students enjoyed the class and happily did the assignments given to them. And at the end of the day, the students had something to take home to the parents and show how much fun they had at school. Next, I went to Miss Fear's second grade classroom at the same school. Upon arriving in the classroom, I saw some of the children cleaning up with Miss Fears. They were gathering toys from the floor and putting them back into the boxes and the shelves they belonged, while two little boys were sitting on beanbag chairs next to a small bookshelf reading children's books. Miss Fears said that they weren't actually reading the books, they were just looking at the pictures because they enjoyed it. The children were very well behaved, and the only time she had to get onto it during that class was when they procrastinated in cleaning up, saying, "If you brought that toy out, then you have to put it back." During this time, the classroom was kind of rowdy, but since there were only 5 children, it wasn't that bad. Once the children had finished cleaning up, Miss Fierce brought some toys onto the table for the children to play with, until it was time to go to the gym. The girls in the classroom played with the toys while the boys continued to look at their picture books. At this point, the classroom was very calm and the children were well behaved. After about 20 minutes, Miss Fierce had everybody line up in a single file line at the door. Then they went to the gym where 2 other classes were already playing. After about 10 minutes of playing in the gym, one of the teachers left and came back with a couple of inflatable balls and set them on the ground. The children were extremely happy and excited as they played with the balls and were constantly running around. A few students even hit a teacher on accident with the balls, but the teacher just laughed it off in good spirit and tossed the balls back to the children. After a few moments of this, one of the teachers came back with a really big inflatable ball and played a game with the students where they would try to keep it in the air for as long as possible. The children loved playing this game, and everyone came over to the teachers to play. Shortly after, some of the students started to misbehave. One little girl refused to share a ball she had, while another student hit a little girl in the arm and was forced to apologize. I enjoyed this observation, not only because the children were friendly, but because of the fun activities the children had. Although there were some incidents, the teachers handled it very well, keeping the overall feeling of the class very positive. And I want my class to have the same positive atmosphere when I teach. The next observation was completed at Miss Sutterfield's third grade classroom at the LEDC Lone Oak Pre-K and Adult School. The class started outside with students from many different classes running around and playing on a playground enclosed by a metal fence. The teachers were standing off to the side, talking amongst themselves while keeping an eye on the students. After about 10 minutes, the teachers lined all the students up at the gate and led them into their respective classrooms. When she entered the classroom, Miss Sutterfield had her students sit at the table with the help of her assistant. It was soon after this that another teacher came to the door and whispered something to Miss Sutterfield. Then Miss Sutterfield grabbed her assistant and all the students, including me, and we gathered inside of a barrier in the corner of the room covered by a plastic wall and made sure everybody was completely inside and nobody was visible on the outside. It was at this time the students started to make some noise, but Miss Sutterfield quickly hushed them while our assistant said, "We are hiding from a very bad man and you have to be quiet so they don't hear us." Even though the teachers tried their hardest to keep the children quiet, they still made noise, and every now and then the teachers would have to hush them down and tell them to be quiet. Miss Sutterfield explained that everybody had to be completely hidden because this was a safety drill. After about 5 minutes, a teacher came through the halls telling the classrooms it was all clear. After this, Miss Sutterfield and her assistant had all the students sit down at the classroom table and gave them each a cup of water, making sure that the students drank it. After all the students finished drinking their water, Miss Sutterfield gave the rest of her class their assignment for the day. The first part of the worksheet had many different words on it, and the teacher said each word individually, asking the class if the word started with the letter B. Then she handed everyone a pencil and asked the children to draw the letter B. The teacher then went to each student and made sure they were doing a good job, and even helped if the students needed it. There were many different letters at the bottom of the page, but the teacher told the students to only circle the letter B using crowns. At this part, the teacher only observed and watched, as some of the students just marked all over the bottom of the page. Once the students finished with the worksheet, the teacher took them up and handed them another one with a jar on it. The teacher then said they're going to cut out the jar and break glow sticks to use as fireflies to put inside the jar. The students seemed really excited by this, and the teachers went around with safety scissors and one at a time cut out a jar, broke a glow stick, and gave the broken glow stick to the student, who then happily poured the glowing liquid onto the jar cutout. The students enjoyed this, and you could definitely see it on their faces. This observation showed me that safety is always the #1 priority, and you always need to be prepared in case of a disaster. The next observation was at Miss Corley's 5th grade special education classroom at the LEDC Cabot and Adult School. Most of the students were around the age of 19, with some being older. The first thing Miss Corley did was have all the students sit around one of the large round tables. And once everyone was seated, the teacher then told the students that they were going to make chalk paper. She then had a student fill a tub with a few inches of water, while she gave everyone else a piece of paper and a stick of chalk. While the student came back with the tub, Miss Corley grabbed it and put it in front of the first student. She then told the student to grab the chalk in front of him and handed him a pair of scissors. She then put her hand over the student's hand and, using one side of the scissors blade, shaved pieces of chalk into the tub of water. She used several different pieces of chalk to do this, to add different colors into the water. And once she thought there was a sufficient amount of chalk in the tub of water, she stopped shaving chalk and then put the scissors and chalk back onto the table. After this, she handed the students their paper and said to very gently dip their paper into the tub for about 5 seconds. After dipping the paper into the tub, it had many different colors on it. The colors were all over the paper, and the students looked surprised upon seeing this. Miss Corley then took the paper to the other table, moved some other art projects aside, and laid the wet paper onto the table so that the sun could dry. She continued helping other students make chalk paper one at a time, and while she was doing it, a few students did occasionally talk to each other, but for the most part, the class was pretty quiet. After everyone was done making chalk paper, Miss Corley looked at the clock and decided there was enough time for one more activity. So she then handed each student a sheet of paper with various black outlined pictures in honor of Father's Day, and she gave some crowns to the students as well. The students then colored in the drawings, while the teacher moved the tub of water to the side for the next class and then cut out the outlines from a previous class's artwork assignment. Once it was time to leave, the teacher gathered up all the students and they left the class together. Miss Corley did a great job when it came to teaching the class, and everyone she worked with was happy and enjoyed the assignment. But since the assignment required her to help each student individually, the classroom atmosphere seemed fairly dull. This observation showed me that any assignment that requires the teacher to spend their full attention to any one student will not make it for an interesting class. The final observation for this video was that Miss Lewis's special education pre-K class at Pathfinders. Everyone in Miss Lewis's classroom was sitting at 3 separate tables, with both of the teachers sitting at the table in the center, along with the students as well. Miss Lewis and her assistant prepared each student an 8-ounce cup of water and some Chex Mix while the students were eating. After eating, a few of the students started getting out of hand, walking around and talking with each other. And at first, the teachers didn't think anything of it. But then more and more students started doing it until the whole class was talking. The teachers could easily handle the situation by just singling out a few students and telling them to be quiet and to sit down. Once the students saw this, the majority of the class followed suit and sat down. After making sure everyone went to the restroom and the students were ready, the teachers went in a single file line outside. Once outside, they were greeted by the blazing summer sun in 2 other classes. Some students started playing together under the playground where it was shady and cool. Other students went in the shadow of the school building next to the teachers, while other students just ran around and did various things. Miss Lewis said that if the students get too hot, they will just go into the shade. The students were fairly well behaved, and after about 20 minutes, the teachers decided it was time to head back. So the teachers had all the students line up at the gate, and the teachers took their students into their classrooms. After everyone had some water, Miss Lewis played music on her classroom speaker while waiting for the parents to come by and pick up their kids. This observation was very enjoyable, and it showed me how a class of students are supposed to act properly and how teachers are supposed to handle bad behavior in order to make sure they behave. These observations gave me many real-life experiences on difficult situations I will face when becoming a teacher, and learning about them now and understanding how to respond to each one will be key for when I become a teacher.